thank you to all of our fellow PIP classmates for your attention to our presentation, Respite Care Endorsement for Individuals with Disabilities Planned. My name is Jackie Vargas, and I'm delighted to introduce our first fellow committee speaker, Monique Perez. Monique is the mother of 5 children, many of whom have significant needs. Johannes is 18, Gabrielle is 16, Ariel is 12, and twins Matthew and Michael are 8.
So this afternoon, we will be providing an overview of our proposal for mandated training for respite caregivers who provide services to individuals with disability. Our 2 to 3 day trainings should include the following: positive behavior support for interventions, activities that are age appropriate and maintain the dignity and respect for individuals and their families. Communication skills while working with a population who may depend on argumentative or nonverbal communication strategies, or may use adaptive equipment for communication, or other needs such as feeding tubes, wheelchairs, and etc. Specific training on unique dietary needs and restrictions, particularly for those with life-threatening conditions such as anaphylactics and celiac disease. CPR and first aid training for those who work directly with individuals who have special needs in order to intervene in emergency situations. We want this because currently there is no mandated training. Without appropriate training, our loved ones are at risk and caregivers feel unsafe leaving their loved ones in the hands of untrained providers. I am one of many who feel unsafe leaving my own children with someone unable to respond in an emergency situation due to the lack of training. I have 5 beautiful boys that keep me very busy. With this being said, whoever watches them must really be on their game. My 8-year-old twins have a handful of anaphylactic allergies, as well as a disease called FPIES, requiring them to maintain a highly restricted diet in order to avoid severe medical reactions. They can only eat about 4 different types of food. They survived off formula until they were 3, when they made progress in their feeding therapy by eating a single grain of rice. That was a very successful day for my twins. To this day, most new food intakes is done in the allergist's office under medical supervision because it can result in a need for medical intervention or even a crash cart. My husband and I got trained for the signs of anaphylactic so we could intervene if necessary. You only have seconds between life and death situations during an anaphylactic attack. Thank you, everyone.
And now I'm delighted to introduce our next committee member, Trisha Cartwright. Trisha is the mother to Angela, who is 18 years old. Trisha?
I wanted to start with a quote from John F. Kennedy, who said, "The goal of our public welfare program must stress the integrity and preservation of the family unit. It must contribute to the needs of those who have ill health and disability. It must reduce the incidence of problems, prevent their occurrence and recurrence, and strengthen and protect the vulnerable in a highly competitive world." So what's the problem? There's no mandated training for caregivers coming into our homes, for respite caregivers coming into our homes. The National Respite Coalition Task Force reports show that 14 to 19% of US children have chronic physical, developmental, behavioral, or emotional conditions. 16.18 million unpaid caregivers provide care to a child with special needs, and 11.1 million continue as they become adults. A recent survey of nearly 5,000 caregivers conducted by the ARC found that 58% of caregivers spend more than 40 hours a week, and 40% more than 80 hours a week providing care for their loved ones. And nearly half of them said that they have more responsibilities than they can handle. 1 out of 5 families report that someone in the family had to quit their job to support the needs of their family members. Besides cost, eligibility, and waiting lists to get an untrained provider. Well-documented barriers include limited options for adequate respite programs, lack of trust towards providers, an inadequate supply of trained providers. In addition to the stories and statistics already shared, having mandated training for respite care workers would have a positive financial impact on state-funded resources. Caregivers could work, contributing to the economy, and depend less on government resources for financial supports. Medicaid-funded community-based services such as home respite care cost less than $1,500 annually, while out-of-care homes such as adult day centers and other day programs cost Medicaid over $11,000 annually per person. For every $1,000 a state spends on respite services, there was a significant drop in the need for hospitalizations, which government-funded Medicare pays approximately $2,000 for an ER visit and over $10,000 per night if that person's admitted. We join together today as one voice for the 16.8 million of us in need of adequately trained respite care providers. Having appropriate respite care would change the lives of so many, including my sister, who's the caregiver of her 11-year-old son, who has had numerous ER visits when improper supervision was provided by untrained providers. I, too, am a stay-at-home mother of an amazing young lady who has disabilities. I am with my daughter 24/7. I am her #1 advocate and cheerleader, her teacher, case manager, healthcare manager, protector, provider, dietitian, and chef, and my favorite title of all, I'm her mom. Despite those demands, I don't feel safe leaving her with an untrained respite care provider. In addition to my daughter, I'm the caregiver to another individual. I'm the caregiver to another individual who has disabilities, myself. I have personally been hospitalized over 45 times in my lifetime due to chronic hidden disabilities. Most of those hospitalizations has been as an adult and mother. From age 11 on, I had an IEP and no family members to advocate for me because I was in the foster care system. Most of those who cared for me were untrained staff in group homes, which had a negative impact on me long into my adult life. Somehow I successfully fumbled through high school and learned how to survive as an adult. While learning to advocate for my own child, I also learned to be a self-advocate, and I'm currently pursuing a degree for human services. At age 40, I'm finally thriving instead of just surviving. As a parent who has been cared for by untrained workers, having mandated training, I would feel safer having a respite care worker provide services that are appropriate for my daughter in my absence. Having one day, once a week, once a month to take care of me could make a huge difference in my health and the life of my family. I'm clearly not alone. The time is now. We ask that you join our voices and help to reduce the incidence of problems, prevent their occurrence and reoccurrence, and strengthen and protect the vulnerable by endorsing a mandated training for respite care providers. Thank you.
Thank you, Trisha. And now I'm delighted to introduce our next committee member, Maria Munoz. Maria is the proud mom to son David, who is 18 years old. Maria, take it away.
Yeah, thank you, Jackie. Hello, everyone. My name is Maria Munoz, and I'm David's mother. And it's an 18 years old young man in the autism spectrum, who is a beneficiary of MedWaiver, the APD respite care service since 2014. Even though this is an essential program designed to prevent parents and caregivers dropping their work and careers and avoid huge amount of stress, and I feel isolated. Families like mine are struggling to find a qualified candidate to take care of our loved one. In almost 7 years, I received service through different agencies and people hired by myself. Most of them have something in common, no training. Most of them do not know how to interact or communicate with people with disability. And most importantly, they don't know how to respond in a dangerous situation. So the consequences, parents are afraid to leave their loved one and add more stress to their life. As Trisha mentioned, we joined together today as a one voice for the 16.8 million of us in need of adequately trained respite care providers. No training also leads to abuse. I have hired in the past one lady from an agency, and I found her yelling to my son in the driveway when he has behaviors. And instead of working to de-escalate situations, she clearly has no training and positive behavior support or intervention strategies. And I also have a bad experience in the past with a respite caregiver who was pushing my son to stay watching cartoon on TV to keep him entertained, to him being busy, ignoring his feelings and decisions. And the people with disability need caregivers that listen attentively. If they have difficulty speaking, treat them with respect and provide them with choice, great age appropriate choices. My son also has epilepsy, and we recently have a scare episode in the hospital. I cannot imagine what could happen if he were under care of a respite caregiver that is not aware of the symptom and does not know how to act in an emergency. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Maria. And now I'm delighted to introduce our next committee member, Sherry Arthur. Sherry is the mother to Brandon, who is 12 years old. Take it away, Sherry.
Thanks, Jackie. At present, 8.6% of the population has a disability. 81% of family caregivers of children with special needs, health care needs, will still not use respite care. If change does not occur, families will continue to need to have one parent stay home or reduce hours, placing the family at greater risk for financial crisis. Consequently, many families must resort to staggering debts as a solution to emergency funds. The greater picture is that these families have less funds to contribute to the economy, and unpaid debts play a staggering role in perpetuating recessions. Furthermore, single income households are often at disadvantage in terms of education, healthcare, and socioeconomic opportunities. In addition to financial issues, families raising special needs children face an exorbitant amount of emotional stress. In one study, the authors examined the physiological effects of stress by measuring cortisol levels in mothers of adolescents and adults with autism. The chronic stress levels were similar to those of parents of children with cancer, combat soldiers, Holocaust survivors, and individuals with PTSD. Many families raising children with disabilities say they feel stressed, exhausted, and isolated. Even though I am a single income family, I admittedly experience these stressors. I personally cannot fathom leaving my child with an untrained respite care worker. My son is the light of my life. He brightens any room he walks into with his happy and loving personality. He is also anaphylactic to peanuts, tree nuts, eggs, dairy, and shellfish. He's allergic to soy, sesame seeds, corn, and all 80 corn derivatives. He has celiac disease and gastroparesis. He also has global apraxia and autism and a cognitive delay, which means communication is difficult and often unintelligible for those that are not trained in augmentative communication methodologies. We are so incredibly careful, and yet he has still suffered anaphylactic reactions 3 times. Most recently was when a family friend was babysitting and she accidentally grabbed the wrong box of cookies. We have not left him with anyone since. How can I trust an untrained respite care worker to care for my child? One mistake, one small crumb of a cookie can lead to death, can lead to me never feeling his little arms wrap around my neck for a hug, to never hear his infectious laughter again. There are no second chances. 7 years ago, my husband had kidney cancer. My mother and sister-in-law dropped everything to care for our son so that I could stay in the hospital and care for my husband. I was blessed with family support during this time. If this situation happens later in life, my mother is aging, and I'm not sure she would be able to step in. What does one do in a situation like this? How do you choose between the safety of two loved ones? The answer is for families living lives much like mine is for the state to mandate training that will teach respite care workers to be proactive and positive behavioral support, augmentative and pictorial communication strategies, but most importantly, in recognizing being able to act in life and death situations.
Thank you, Sherry. Our PIP classmates come from all over the state of Florida and have their own unique story to share with you. We share a commonality as individuals as well, if you will, the phrase, to live it is to know it. And what do I mean by that? To live autism is to know autism. To live Down syndrome is to know Down syndrome. To live cerebral palsy is to know cerebral palsy. To live apraxia is to know apraxia. To live epilepsy and seizures is to know epilepsy and seizures. To live life-threatening allergies is to know life-threatening allergies. To live with physical disabilities without cognitive impairments is to know physical disabilities without cognitive impairments. To live with physical disabilities with cognitive impairments is to know physical disabilities with cognitive impairments. To live it is to know it. I'm the proud mother of a 20-year-old son with autism, St. John, here he is. St. John's a student at the North Florida School of Special Education and plays the cello in the Jacksonville Symphony Youth Orchestras. He reads and plays music, but is minimally verbal, with his receptive language being greater than his expressive language. We are incredibly proud of him, but recognize his limitations in that he can, 1, never be left alone at home, 2, will never live alone, and 3, requires daily supervision. Today, you heard an overview of our respite care endorsement for individuals with disabilities plans, with proposed trainings and why we want such a plan in place, eye-opening statistics on the state of respite care, direct and personal stories on respite caregivers, and what will happen if things don't change, and how many would benefit if our ask was granted. Hear Monique's words. You literally have seconds between life and death situations. To live it is to know it. Hear Trisha's words. I choose not to use respite care because of the lack of trust due to inadequately trained respite care providers. To live it is to know it. Hear Maria's words. In almost 7 years, I have received services through different agencies and people hired by myself, and most of them have something in common. No training. To live it is to know it. Hear Sherry's words. One mistake, one small crumb of a cookie can lead to death. There are no second chances. To live it is to know it. Here are our words. Why do we want this? Because there is no mandatory training. Using positive behavior supports and interventions, doing activities that are age appropriate, using proficient communication skills with those who may depend on augmentative or nonverbal communication strategies, training on following dietary needs, restrictions for those with life-threatening allergies, and using CPR and first aid training is what we are asking for in our cost-saving 2 to 3 day training plan. Would you leave your child just with anyone? To live it is to know it. On behalf of our entire committee, we thank you for the opportunity to present our respite care endorsement for individuals with disabilities plan. We join together as one voice for the 16.8 million of us in need of adequately trained respite care providers. Won't you join us? Thank you.